January real estate numbers in the GTA. Toronto overtakes Vancouver as the most expensive housing market in Canada, and garden suites have been officially passed by council in Toronto. We're going to cover all of this and much more. Hi, this is Andy from Suite Additions, where we help homeowners and investors generate wealth while creating better homes with additional legal suites. To learn more, visit us at suiteadditions.com, download our free guides to get started. And please take a moment to like this video so that more people can learn about this, and consider subscribing to our channel so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Okay, so let's get started. First item on the list here, January real estate numbers. And no surprise, it's another record month. What can I say? We don't know when this is going to end, but it seems like, with all of the money that's still being pumped into the system, really strong demand, this is what we're seeing, right? So the numbers here for January 2022, 1.24 million for the average home in the GTA, and that's every home, right? So that's condos, semi-detached homes, townhouses, detached homes. So and that went up from 966,000. Okay, so from 966,000 in January 2021 to 1.24 million in January 2022. That's an increase of 28.6%. And my understanding is that inventory is still at an all-time low, although some have said that it's still a busy month compared to previous years. It's just that the houses are getting absorbed really quickly because of the high demand. So what's the reason? Obviously there are many factors, but the number one thing that we always look at is what the government's doing, as well as what the central banks are doing. Still a lot of stimulus, a lot of monetary stimulus as well, that is driving the market. So last week there was a meeting held by the Bank of Canada. A lot of people thought that this is the time that they're going to raise interest rate, because we've had 30 years of we've had the highest inflation officially in the past 30 years at 4.8%. And that's the official rate, right? A lot of people argue that unofficially it's probably somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. If you do proper accounting for housing, food, and energy, a lot of people think that's 10 to 15%. But anyways, even at the official rate at 4.8%, it's the highest that we've seen in the country in 30 years, yet they've not been able to even increase the rates, the overnight lending rate, by 0.25%. So that speaks volumes to the fragility of the system overall, or the economy, because if they raise interest rates a little bit, that's there's a risk of the economy falling into recession. And I've said this before, and I think the bigger issue is the amount of debt that the federal government as well as the provincial government's in. Whenever you raise interest rates, they have to service their debts, right? So just in interest payments alone, that really balloons pretty high. And if you look here in Canada, we've doubled our debt loads federally. We've doubled it in the past 10 years, right? So it's really accelerating. Is it going to take I think we're somewhere in the 2 trillion mark right now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to check the website debtclock.ca. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to pull that up right now. Debtclock.ca, and we're at 1.2 trillion. And I believe that it was around 600 billion just 10 years ago. So is it going to double again in the next 10 years, or possibly at an even accelerated pace? So that's really the big thing that I'm looking at that's causing these prices to go up. A lot of it is really the valuation in your currency, right? Obviously, there are other factors such as still a high amount of immigration. The government has hit their target of 400,000 last year. A lot of them were already in Canada. And then really The other big factor is the supply constraint, the challenges with getting anything built, right? So if you do any sort of renovations and construction, you'll know how difficult it is to get the permit from the municipality. So there's many factors that's really driving it. I think that the fiscal and monetary policy side is really the biggest driving factor, and we're seeing that worldwide. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is Toronto beats Vancouver as most expensive real estate market in Canada. So the RBC published an analysis on Friday, which showed that Toronto's composite MLS home price index benchmark of 1.26 million just edged out Vancouver's benchmark price of 1.25 million in January. Okay, so we're splitting hairs here. At the end of the day, both Toronto and Vancouver are the driving markets that's really causing this house price inflation in Canada. Although we're seeing other markets that are pretty hot as well, such as Montreal, Halifax in the East Coast, and there's a lot of activity going into Alberta now as well. But definitely Toronto and Vancouver is going to be the two hottest markets. Now, if I had to give some sort of an explanation as to why Toronto has caught up or surpassed Vancouver, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're a lot more of a diverse economy. Vancouver traditionally has a lot, of money that has been, quote unquote, foreign investments, and it's considered kind of the playground of the rich, whereas Toronto actually has a lot of demand from people, especially with a huge amount of immigration. A lot of working class people that are in the GTA in Ontario for the jobs. Again, much more diverse economy. That could really be the driving factor that's pushing Toronto, into being the most expensive market in all of Canada. Okay, so we'll see where this goes. I don't think it's really a big deal either way. It's really just an arbitrary number when you compare 1.26 million and 1.255 million. It's very unaffordable for the majority of people. So this, all of this speaks to what we're seeing here, in our local markets. As I'm working with clients, a lot of homeowners and investors, they're getting priced out. They're not able to, get the properties that they want. So I just want to show you one property that we're looking at, and this was actually sent to me by a friend, and he showed this Hamilton bungalow on the east mountain of Hamilton. This listed 10 days ago for, it listed a while before that. It sold 10 days ago. It listed for $850,000. And, we've seen these properties go for, 1 million, 1.1 million. And this one just kind of blew it out of the water. It was 1.22 million. And this is a standard bungalow. It is a legal 2 units. So somebody did put in a legal second suite. And this sold for 1.22 million, right? So this is really just indicative of what we're seeing in the markets here in the GTA. Again, Hamilton is a very competitive market. A few years ago, a lot of people were going to Hamilton to try to get more affordability, but now Hamilton is definitely one of the larger cities in Ontario that has become unaffordable. Now, this property in particular was interesting because, as you can see in the description here, there's a very deep lot. So it's almost 200 feet deep. So 41 and change by 199 feet deep. Okay. So for those of you who are familiar with the new SDU policy, SDU stands for Secondary Dwelling Units in Hamilton. We refer to them as garden suites. So that's passed in Hamilton. I'm going to do a video very soon. Actually, we've already done the video in Hamilton, but we didn't edit yet. So that's going to be coming up in the coming weeks, and we're going to outline some of the rules in Hamilton. But I'm wondering if this particular buyer knew something that his or her competitors didn't, which is they're going to be able to put in a 800 square foot detached home in the backyard as of right. There may be some bylaw issues around parking and other things that need to be addressed, but for the most part, they can build this detached structure without a lot of the traditional red tape that's associated with development. Okay, so this is why I always encourage people to understand some basic zoning in the markets that they're looking for, because that might be able to give you a competitive advantage. So on the surface, we see that, yeah, there were 30 offers on this property, and they paid like almost 400,000 over asking, which is ridiculous. But it may have been priced low to begin with, and is it possible that this was a fair price, or this was a good price, considering that they're going to be able to build an additional house behind this house and use it themselves or rent it out or what have you. So these kind of things may give that buyer a competitive advantage. So I do encourage you folks to go out there and understand some basic zoning in the markets that you're looking at. So yeah, I mean, there's a legal suite here, and then the potential for a third unit in the back. So that really could increase the value of this property even more. Okay, so on the topic of Hamilton, there's an article that was sent to me from the Hamilton Spectator. This relates to a homeowner who has another typical detached bungalow, and they have an existing detached garage that they want to convert to a legal garden suite. Okay, now also within Hamilton's bylaws is that if you have an existing accessory structure, including a garage, you can actually convert that to a SDU or garden suite as of right. Again, meaning that there aren't a lot of onerous bylaws surrounding it. But you can see here in this article here, proposed Hamilton Mountain garage conversion draws wrath of neighbors. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that we're going to have to expect that's going to happen as you're doing small scale infill development, is that neighbors aren't going to be too happy with what you're doing, especially if they think that it's going to be poorly constructed. So if I just look into this article here a little bit, this house is on the East Mountain, 38 Rendell Boulevard. So it's owned by a couple in Burlington, and they're, as I mentioned, they're looking at converting the garage. Here's what the neighbor said. There must be a better way to supply housing to the area than converting garages into housing, said a neighbor who has lived in the area for more than 60 years. 60 years, wow. That's a long time. We're going to turn Hamilton into a shanty town. Nobody wants a garage next door converted into an apartment. Okay. So I'm going to pause right there and sort of get into this a little bit, because this is kind of the same narrative that we're going to be hearing from NIMBYs, right? So NIMBY, for those of you who don't know, not in my backyard. They're really concerned with density coming in and ruining the neighborhood, ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood, and to a certain extent, it is understandable. But a lot of people have to understand that density does not equal poor construction practices, right? Whether you're converting a garage or you're building a new SDU or you're building a new house for that matter, you have to comply with building code standards. So if it's an existing garage and it's not something that is suitable for conversion, you can't pass the building code or you can't get an engineer to approve it, it's not going to get built. You have to ensure that structurally it's sound, it's got to be properly insulated, and you have to have frost protection, that sort of stuff. And if you don't have that, in a lot of cases, it has to be torn down anyways and rebuilt. So I think that's, this is going to be the sentiment that a lot of you are going to be hearing. And I think you just have to understand and accept that that's going to happen. Obviously you want to be on good terms with your neighbors when you're building these things, but a lot of them are just not going to understand. So if you have the ability to build it by right, in a lot of cases, you're just going to have to kind of go through with it, try to get their support. But if you don't get their support, there's nothing that can be done, because, your focus is on building more housing. A lot of these are typically more affordable than your existing properties. And it is incumbent on you as a homeowner or investor to build a good quality product, right? Whether it's somebody's existing home or whether you're building something new, there's an opportunity for it to be a good product or it could be a terrible product, right? There's a lot of existing homeowners where, they leave garbage out on the streets and or on their driveways or, and it's very poorly maintained. Okay, that's not the same thing as density. Okay, and we've seen evidence of detached ADUs, garage conversions in markets all across North America that have been done really well. And again, you can't just judge, something without the opportunity for somebody to actually do the work, right? It's kind of like you're guilty until proven innocent, right? It reminds me of that movie. That old movie, I think it was called Minority Report, where you didn't even commit the crime, but you're already proven. They already suspect that you're guilty because of it. So this is kind of the same thing, and I just kind of wanted to point this out. And this is just one example. I've seen many articles related to neighbors being upset at detached SDUs, and this is nothing new. We're going to start seeing a lot more of it. It's happened in other markets where ADUs or garden suites have been around for over a decade, but over time, a lot of these neighbors, they'll see, hey, you know what, our neighborhood didn't fall apart. It actually added some vibrancy to the neighborhood, and we provided more housing, right? So that's kind of the way that we have to look at it. So I just wanted to point that out with this article here, and yeah, if you want to learn more about Hamilton's bylaws, you can go to their website at, you can just Google Engage Hamilton Secondary Dwelling Unit. There's going to be all kinds of information there. And again, there's a lot of cities that have already put these policies in place to allow these detached units. So the next one we're going to talk about is the city of Toronto. And this is really going to be the big one. Of course, just because of the number of properties there in Toronto, the land values in Toronto. So just this past week, Toronto City Council votes to allow garden suites on residential properties, right? So this is huge. I mean, this is following along with the laneway housing policy that was issued several years ago. They've been able to extrapolate a lot of information and learn from that process. But now with garden suites, you're potentially adding in, an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude more houses, because the vast majority of single-family homes single-family homes in neighborhoods across Toronto, so in areas like Scarborough, North York, Etobicoke, they don't have access to laneways or alleyways, right? So now you can build them in interior lots and corner lots. So this is going to be a really big housing option, and it's not going to solve the housing crisis, right? This is just one part of it that is going to help. And so there's going to be more news about this coming up. I'm going to be putting out more content with regards to the garden suite policy in Toronto. We're going to do a video at some point outlining the rules. So I just want to let everyone know that it actually has been passed. However, I think we're still in the appeal period where there could be some pushback and there could be an appeal. But for the most part, not all the councillors, but majority of the councillors did vote in favor of having these garden suites be a by right housing option in Metro Toronto. Now, this is really part of a larger initiative in the city of Toronto, which is called the Expanding Housing Options in Neighborhoods. The acronym is EHON, and this is really to promote higher density and missing middle housing options in a lot of the low-rise residential neighborhoods across the city. So they're encouraging things like duplexes, triplexes, low-rise walk-up apartments across the city, and in some of the higher density corridors, some of the busier main streets, perhaps there's better transit, access to easy access to subways and other public transit options. They're going to make it easy to add density, right? So you may have, a lot of these properties that maybe they're 2 stories, maybe they're commercial on the main floor and then residential on the second floor. I think that the goal is to allow people to be able to just, as of right, build higher density, build it up. And I think that's a great thing. And again, garden suites is just one aspect of it, but, there's going to be a lot more of these types of opportunities. And, I truly believe that, one of the biggest factors for helping our affordability crisis is supply, right? And a lot of people argue that, yeah, you're adding supply, they're building all these condos, and it's just that the wealthy are going to buy them up because they're able to access the loans. There's certainly some truth to that, but if you're going to build a lot more and you're going to meet all the demand, whether it's a owner occupier or whether it's a tenant that's living there, at some point you're going to balance the market, right? And that's going to be good for everyone. So on a first principles level, I think that if you build more, you're creating more wealth, and more people are going to be able to access the housing. Okay, so this is very exciting. We're very excited to see what's going to happen with this initiative. And again, garden suites are here now, and I expect that we're going to be working on some of these projects in the coming months and years. We're already working on some projects in Hamilton and Brantford right now, so for sure Toronto is going to be part of that. And the last item on the list here that I want to talk about is even this program and other programs like it are really one part of a larger provincial initiative to really expand housing options, right? So we mentioned before Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choice Act, which that was actually the bill that was passed in 2019 to push the municipalities to have the policies in place for the garden suites or the ADUs as a third unit option for properties. So on a provincial level, you can see that they're making a big push in this article here. Toronto Housing Task Force. I'm always a little wary whenever I hear the phrase task force, but anyways, you can see that the goal really is to add more housing units. So what you can see here is that a housing affordability task force convened last year by the provincial government released a report with 55 recommendations aimed at allowing more people in Ontario to find and afford a home, including a goal of building 1.5 million homes in 10 years, right? That's going to be a big task. But if they can remove a lot of the hurdles associated with construction, I think that is possible. In Canada, we are actually the lowest out of the G7 nations in terms of housing supply, and a lot of it has to do with bottlenecks at the municipal level. So, the federal government can say they want houses, to be built as much as they want. They can say that they want more homes to be built, but at the end of the day, it's the municipalities that are issuing the building permits. And if there's a bottleneck there, or they're short-staffed, that's not going to happen, right? So really, it has to come down to the municipal level. So here they're saying more supply is key. Building more homes will reduce the competition for a scarce supply of homes and will give Ontarians more housing choices. It will improve housing affordability across the board. I don't know if it's going to do that. It's certainly going to help, but this is like they say right here, right? It's a very complex problem. There isn't a silver bullet, and I think again the other thing is we have to pay attention to what's going on at a macro level, and this is why I talk a lot about that. Is that the amount of money that they're pumping into the system that is driving inflation, and for a lot of folks, they're buying houses because they're looking at that as an inflation hedge because they see what's happening on the big picture and they're really trying to protect themselves, right? Okay, so that's all I have for today, guys. I don't know. This is the first time doing this. What do you think about this format? Is it, I think that's it might be beneficial for me to kind of put together something like this once a month, where we talk a little bit about the real estate market, about housing policy, how it relates to what we're doing with housing densification, how it affects us as homeowners and investors. If you think this is a good format, please leave me a comment. Let me know. Or if you don't think it's good, format, let me know as well. And if there's something else you want to see, and perhaps we'll continue to do these. This is more of a casual setup where really I'm just going through news articles and what I'm seeing. It's a way for me to learn and stay on top of things as well. So if you find that this is beneficial, please let us know. All right. So again, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you need any help with a particular property that you're working on, feel free to go to our website. You can schedule a on-site consultation or a Zoom consultation for your property. And we also do design work for second suites and garden suites as well. So you can check us out at suiteadditions.com. All right, everyone. So thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to learn more about investing in housing densification and how you can get involved, hit that subscribe button. I put together a beginner's guide. We cover important bylaw and building code requirements for cities in Ontario and all the design considerations you need to make to successfully complete your project. You can download that through the link in the description below. Until next time, to your success.